Hello and welcome to the Midnight Bible Study. The Bible Code has exposed the fraud of many skeptics who have been claiming that the Bible has been edited and manipulated so it's not reliable. And as a result of this, in particular we're talking about the Torah, and as a result of this, many people have walked away from their faith and their eternal salvation could very well be at stake. I mean, one of the most essential maxims of the faith is, "He who endures to the end, the same shall be saved." That comes from Jesus Christ and from the Apostle Paul. So when skeptics say, "Oh, the Bible's not reliable," it's you can't believe anything in Genesis. It's just an edited document. These frauds have been exposed by the Bible Code itself. Evidently, God foresaw what these charlatans were going to try to pull, and he put a code in there in order to foil it and to prove that that was not happen, and he was able to foresee that the Bible would be preserved. So it's a little involved, but I'm going to show you, I'm going to explain the actual how this is proved through Bible Code, how the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, and that's just today's topic, is proved by code, and it's proven that it has not been manipulated. So Rabbi Weissmandel, he looked into Genesis and Abraham's name. He found out Abraham's name. Now keep in mind, Genesis is where you're going to find Abraham. So if there was a code in there, it would make sense that God might have coded in Abraham's name. And that's what happened. His name was spelled out at 49 intervening letters. Okay, between each letter of Abraham's name, there was an occurrence of Elohim, one of the names of God. So now, if Abraham's name was just coded in there, and if that was it, then that could be just by random chance. But as Jeffrey Satinover has broken down, that's not what happened. It was far more involved than that. So Rabbi Weissmandel is not the only one who found various kinds of hidden structures in the Bible. Most of these disprove the so-called documentary hypothesis. This is the linchpin of higher critics, and this is a quote, that Bible texts are not unified creations, but passages of text by various authors, cut and pasted over the centuries by committees. Like the watermark on a paper currency, a numerically consistent pattern permeating the text would suggest deliberate intent by the author. It would strongly suggest that whatever text contains, the pattern comes from a single source. In other words, these are highly involved codes. And all you have to do is remove one letter, and the whole book of Genesis breaks down on the codal level. I mean, it's just like a computer code. If you take out one digit, the whole thing you're going to have problems with the code. So this comes from, we can thank Jeffrey Satinover in his book, Cracking the Bible Code. So let's talk, well, let me just say that. Let me just give a little example here. If you're walking down the street and you see a quarter on the street, okay, it's happened to me probably many times. I might pick it up, put it in my pocket. Maybe I've even found a dollar bill, maybe a $5 bill, not often, but occasionally. And fine, people accidentally drop money once in a while. That's just by chance. But if you find, let's say, 3 quarters all right next to each other, touching, okay, that doesn't happen. That just doesn't happen. If 3 quarters fall on the ground, it's highly unlikely that they're all going to be right next to each other touching. They tend to scatter around. I mean, it's not likely. Now, what are the chances then of, if I see a pile of 10 quarters on the ground and they're all perfectly stacked in a little stack, all the edges are exactly lined up, what are the chances that just randomly fell out of someone's pocket. And they all bounced and perfectly stacked up there on the ground, and the person didn't hear it when they fell or anything. Well, that didn't happen. Okay, the chances of that happening are just, I can't say it couldn't happen, but I can't believe it could happen. But however, the mathematicians have run the numbers on it, and they find the chances of that are 1 in a million. Personally, I don't think it would be 1 in a million, and I'll tell you why. The last time you drop the quarters, the last one after a million, it's not going to stack up perfectly, all lined up in a perfect stack of 10. And therefore, you're going to have to start over on a whole nother million. I mean, it just doesn't happen that way. But even if it was 1 in a million, which it's not, but even if it was 1 in a million, that's highly unlikely. Highly unlikely that would happen by chance. And so that's what we're seeing in these Bible codes. We're seeing incredible patterns emerging that don't happen just by chance. Now, Abraham Oren is a teacher of computer programming in Israel. And he began to search for the passage in Leviticus for hidden appearances of the word Aaron, because he knew the Torah well, and he knew where it would most likely be relevant and where that name would most likely be coded in based on knowing the Torah so well. And he looked out to see how often he could spell it out at various equidistant letter intervals. So at certain distances, the letters were separated by a number of letters because they're coded in. Very difficult to pull off. Very difficult to pull that off because everything else has to make sense, and yet you're coding in these letters at certain intervals, and that's going to change. That's going to be hard to pull off. So, not only did he find Aaron where he thought he might find it, but he found it spelled out 10 times at equidistant spaces, 10 times in the very passage in Leviticus where he thought it would be relevant and might turn up. Then he scanned the text visually for vertical equal interval words, and he found it vertically. So, but what about 10 times? Could that happen by chance? That would be astounding, absolutely astounding. Anyway, he brought this question to his friend, Professor Rips, at the Institute of Mathematics at the Hebrew University. So he's an eminent mathematician, one of the most respected mathematicians in the world. In fact, some of the most eminent mathematicians hold his abilities in the highest esteem, according to Jeffrey Stanover. And Rips looked at the passage in question, and he had a colleague computerize it, along with a program to search out spellings of Aaron at equidistant intervals. And when he got the results back, he was shocked. He was blown away, because it didn't just happen once. It happened 25 times. 25 appearances. Now, a cryptologist reviewing this study recalculated the odds of finding 25 in that passage at 1 in 2 million. 1 in 2 of it happened randomly. The chance 1 in 2 million that this could just happen randomly. So, just for example, what does that mean? 1 of 2 million. Just think of this. Let's say I had a deck of cards, and I have 52 cards here, and I'm going to make you a bet. I'm going to say, you pull out the 7 of hearts on your first trial, spread out the cards, and I'll say, here's the deal. If you pull, you get one pull at the deck. If you pull out the 7 of hearts, I'm going to give you $1,000. And if you don't pull out, if you pull any other card out of the deck, then you're going to give me $1,000. Would you take that bet? 99 out of 100 people, if they're sober, would not take that bet because the odds are 52 to 1 they're going to lose it, and I would be the winner. I would certainly take it. In fact, you can line them up. I'd take it all day long. With those kind of odds, I would make a fortune. But that's what, and the reason you wouldn't take that bet is because it's 52 to 1 you're going to lose, and you know you're not going to pull the 7 of hearts. If you do, it would be like a celebration. It would be incredible. It would be practically a miracle. In fact, it would be 1 in 52. So the odds of that happening are what, and you know it's not. You know you're probably not going to pull that 7 of hearts. That's why you wouldn't take the bet. If you understand odds, that's a terrible betting odd. And so the odds of finding those 25 Abrahams at equidistant letters coded into this text, which is otherwise coherent and has a surface message that flows, is 1 in 2 million. 1 in 2 million. So those odds are beyond comprehension. They're so poor. All right. If you were now just think of this. If you were by random chance searching and wanted to find, this could have, I could search some other. He just looked and it was there. How do we know it's not in some other passage? Well, you would have to search in order to find that more than 2 million pages in order to find that by random chance. And that's if you got extremely lucky and the absolute most favorable odds fell into your in other words, probably even with 2 million pages, you're not going to find it. But in theory, you could find it if you search 2 million pages. Now, that's how rare it is. But Orrin didn't have to search 2 million pages. In fact, he went right to the right passage just because he knew the Torah. He knew where to look based on the content. He knew where to look, and so he found it right away. But if he wanted to find it again in some other document, he'd have to spend 2 million pages analyzing them. That could take probably the rest of his life, maybe at least many years. So next, Rip performed identical experiment with 117 permutations of other coded words, and it was equally shocking what he found, because he did this by computer, and Aaron appeared no more or less often than expected in other documents. In other words, when he looked for it elsewhere, he didn't find it. It was nowhere else. It wasn't coded just randomly into anything. The results were just what you'd find by chance. It's like finding 15% of E's in a paragraph of a typical English, according to Jeffrey Satinover. Because you're going to find 15% of letters in a paragraph in E's. Okay, it's there. So, but that's just random. That's about what you're going to find, and so that makes the discovery of in Leviticus absolutely. It just verifies the obvious, which is that's a miracle, or at least it was coded in there by a genius beyond anything a human could pull off. By the way, when Rips tried this in the Samaritan Bible, now this was in the Hebrew Bible, the tradition of excellence, of accuracy, absolute accuracy down to the jot and tittle, down to every single letter in those Hebrews Bibles had to be exactly perfect. If even one letter was wrong, they'd throw the whole thing out and start over again, or at least they'd cut out that section and start over again. Even one letter, nothing they would spend years working on one passage of text, because they were such fanatics for exact accuracy to the original, because they knew it. They understood this had been delivered to Moses letter by letter from God, and they took it as literally a matter of life and death that you didn't make a mistake. That's why it was possible that they could get the code right. I mean, if you just paraphrase one sentence, the whole thing falls apart. No, they had to do it. Everything had to be perfect, exactly to the letter. So when they looked at the same passage in the Samaritan Bible, the code had magically disappeared. It just wasn't there anymore, because they hadn't been faithful to the original translation. So there you go. That explains how the code. So what this code does is it shows that this text has not been edited. The Samaritan Bible was slightly paraphrased, or the wording might have been slightly different, and the result is that the code disappeared. So the original is flawless, absolutely flawless. The code is intact. And it goes to show that all of these claims by skeptics, in efforts to get people to walk away from their faith, were frauds. God bless you. Good night from the Midnight Bible Study.